Turkey arrests a controversial televangelist. Is this man a dangerous revolutionary or a bizarre playboy? I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is Adnan Oktar. He's the kind of character you could imagine Sacha Baron Cohen lampooning in a movie like Borat. Adnan Oktar's religious TV program features him surrounded by luxury vehicles, mansions, and typically blonde young women he calls kittens. Just as colorful are his sermons. He preaches a feminist revolution within Islam while advocating that women appear in public with skimpy clothing and makeup. But the allegations against Oktar are no joke. He and hundreds of his supporters now face a litany of charges. They include running a criminal organization, tax offenses, sexual abuse, and terror charges. His followers condemn the accusations. They say he's the target of a vicious witch hunt by a conservative government. In a moment, we'll be joined by a former so-called kitten who now says she was a victim of his abuse. But first, this report by Haider Abbasi.
Meet Adnan Oktar, a Turkish preacher and self-proclaimed author on Islam. But he isn't exactly what comes to mind when you think religious scholar. Oktar had his own television show in Turkey where he discussed religious topics. Between his sermons on faith and Islamic values, the 62-year-old liked to dance. A fondness for designer suits and opulent living, he'd surround himself with young female devotees, whom he called kittens. But behind this colourful image, the reality seemed far more sinister. And now the party is over. Behind this gate is the luxury home of Adnan Oktar. It was here that Oktar and more than 100 of his associates were arrested last week. It's reported that police found weapons and ammunition. Oktar is facing a series of charges, including fraud and sexual assault. He's also accused of running a criminal gang, money laundering and torturing people. Oktar denies all the charges and accuses British intelligence of being behind his arrest. For years, Oktar has been viewed by many Muslims around the world as a respected author. In Turkey, others have considered him an eccentric. Writing under the pen name Harun Yahya, his books would focus on refuting Darwin's theory of evolution. And many Islamic shops stock his books.
From 2000 to 2008, his books were very popular. They were in big demand. Wherever there were book fairs, his works would sell. But after that, there was a decline in their popularity.
So where did it all go wrong for Oktar? Pirat Develioglu began following Adnan Oktar in the 1980s and remained with the group for more than 10 years.
When you leave the group and become successful, this is a bad example. Adnan Oktar wants to give this message inside this organization. Those who leave the group should never be successful. If you leave it, you face big problems. That's why they started to defame and slander me.
For years, Oktar has been accused of preying on young, wealthy women, using sex and drugs as blackmail to lure them into his organization. And many who wanted to leave say they were forced to stay. In February, Oktar's TV show was suspended by Turkey's broadcasting watchdog, which said it undermined gender equality. So after years of rumors and allegations, what's prompted Turkish police to act now? Haider Abbasi, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now is former Adnan Oktar follower Ceylan Ozgul. In West Jerusalem, we have Yisrael Medad. He's a research fellow at the Menachem Begin Heritage Center. And in Islamabad, Mohammed Waqas Khan, he's a research fellow at the University of Notre Dame. Let me go to you first, Ceylan, and I thank you so much for coming onto the show. It's really important to get your perspective here.
Thank you for having me.
The detention warrant. I'm looking at this list of charges. It's insane. Fraud, sexual assault, child kidnapping, tax evasion, slander, military espionage. Does that sound like the group that you were once a part of?
Yes, exactly the group that I was once a part of.
Why did you
unfortunately.
leave?
Actually, when I saw the list that morning of the raids, first I was really shocked because it's a very long list of one paper full of charges. And then I started reading the charges and I thought, unfortunately, all of these are true.
What was the point at which you decided this is too much for me, I have to go, I have to leave?
It started when it was 2013. I tried to leave when it was 2013, but unfortunately my trial to leave was unsuccessful because they saw me trying to leave and they stopped me. So at the time, it was only 2 years into the start of the A9 TV, and I was realizing something really started to go wrong. So I decided that I shouldn't be a part of this organization anymore. But then it wasn't until 2017 that I could leave.
Did they make it very difficult for you?
Yeah, it was literally imprisonment. That's why I couldn't leave. Right now we are seeing a house which is full of cameras, full of screens. So I was in that house. That's why it was very difficult for me to leave.
Right. I want to go to Pakistan for the Pakistani perspective. Mohammed Waqas Khan, one of the reasons why I want to come to you is I guess like you initially came across Harun Yahya, the pen name or the brand. I remember seeing his books in an Islamic bookstore in Johannesburg, South Africa, seeing it in Malaysia and in other countries as well. There's a perception of Adnan Oktar and what he stands for outside of Turkey, which is of, I don't know, a creationist scholar, I guess. Is that how you saw it as well?
Well, Adnan Oktar, or as his pen name, Harun Yahya, was like a great religious scholar to us, especially to me, like for the younger generation of Pakistan, the generation who believes upon Islam and believes that there is no certain thing like evolution or something like that. So his books upon the issue that are giving us a very strong perspective against evolution was like something very fascinating. Initially, I was one of the people who become a victim of that like attractive theory that there is no evolution.
But
and
Mohammed Waqas, let me ask you, sorry to interrupt you, right? So let me ask you, was it that you decided to go with the scientific consensus on evolution, right? That, okay, you know, human beings have evolved with Darwinism and that you can still be religious and accept that? Or did you see what was going on in Turkey and did you see, I don't know, the girls and the insinuations of sex parties and that sort of side to Adnan Oktar, which made you think maybe this guy is dodgy? Which one was it?
Well, that's disturbing. You know, especially in Pakistan, you see, we have been hearing the news about Tariq Ramazan, another religious scholar, Noman Ali Khan, another religious scholar, and now Adnan Oktar. And we have been thinking that these people are really religious scholars and religious people. But now, when we have seen such kind of news, it's terrible.
Right.
I mean, it's like disturbing, very disturbing. I don't know, I mean,
Right.
how to describe that, but it's not acceptable at least.
Okay, Yisrael Medad, I want to ask you if you're a fan of Adnan Oktar.
I'm not a fan because I don't know him. I understand him as a person over the past 2 or 3 years who's been trying to reach out to Israel, even Judaism. And whenever a hand is outstretched, I take it and I try to see if I can go along with it.
If I told you that in his previous books he saw a conspiracy between Darwinists, Freemasons and Zionists as being behind all the problems in the world, and it was packed with all sorts of anti-Semitic stuff, you would say what?
I would say that everybody has a past, everybody has a present, and everybody has a future. If I understand he has rejected that or has tried to explain it, doesn't make a difference. At the present moment that I am reading and listening to him as much as I can, I see some positive force, which I welcome.
Okay, so this is interesting. And one of the reasons why I went to Jerusalem and I went to Islamabad before I come back to you here, Ceylan, in studio, is we've got international perceptions
of course.
and perspectives about the brand Harun Yahya and the man Adnan Oktar. Was this by design? Or is it just that this is a complicated guy and a complicated institution, that's why you're going to have these various perspectives?
No, actually, these perspectives are formed on purpose. Also, inside the organization, there is a cell system. Not everyone can know everything that is going on inside the organization or about the activities of the organization. That's why a lot of high-profile people, a lot of really educated people join this organization. Also, our former guest said that everyone has a past, everyone has a present and a future. The past of this organization didn't look like how it looks today. That's why, including me, a lot of people, a lot of young people joined this organization.
What was the secret to the appeal? Why did you say, I want to join this organization?
It was different for every single person, like tailored for every single person. But for me, the organization looks like an organization led by a man who is writing books on creation and Islam.
Did he write the books?
No, he didn't.
Who wrote the books?
His followers, his students like me, were contributing all together in a pool of activities, which led to the books and articles and conferences, all these activities that we see today or we used to see.
Right.
So it wasn't looking like this. The organization evolved and the man also evolved. In the matter of this evolution of his own...
Although he rejects evolution, yes.
All these crimes came out.
Right. And so, for example, when he reaches out to Judaism or even in politics to the nation state of Israel, what does that mean right now? Because we have someone like Yisrael Medad saying, I don't know much about the guy, but he's extending a hand.
I think he's
What's behind that?
I think he's only being opportunistic. Because we see this also in other harmful organizations like this. When they see maybe an over-enthusiastic audience, they take this as a call. For example, I know right now Israel especially, and maybe a few other states, but we see this in Israel a lot, an understanding of whoever supports me is my friend, whoever don't support me is my enemy kind of approach. Not in everyone, but in a lot of people. I think he made use of this approach.
Right. So, Mr. Medad, you're being played basically by an opportunist who's running a sex cult, essentially. How do you feel about that?
That's a possibility. The possibility is that he himself and his followers, and I understand many tens of thousands of people who are watching the films, could be convinced that there is a future between a less aggressive form of Islam and other countries around the world, even the state of Israel, which is a Jewish country. And in that, we're helping to build peace, coexistence, even though perhaps the path and the road is bumpy. But if you don't start to go along somewhere, you're never going to get to any sort of resolution of crisis or conflict.
Right. But Mr. Medad, you say a less aggressive form of Islam. Maybe, this is seen as a sort of a more palatable alternative. But we read again the charges: sexual assault, child kidnapping, fraud, tax evasion, slander, military espionage, and so forth. We have a former member of the organization saying, you know what, all of this stuff is true. Don't you want to press pause for a second and go, hold on, maybe this isn't the guy whose friendship we should be accepting?
First, that's a very good possibility. Everybody has to take a good look at everything. I'm just wondering, with such a long list of crimes that he is being charged with, or will be charged with, or will not be charged with, I think they could have been done maybe a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. Why all of a sudden now do we see such a long list of crimes, including espionage, when, as far as I know, because I met recently 2 of his aides in Jerusalem, he's been going on for a very long time. This is very strange.
Okay, this is interesting, and let me ask you, Ceylan, because is it maybe true that a lot of stuff might have been tolerated, or he might have been left alone, the group might have been left alone, until he decided to get involved in politics, and once he decided to get involved in politics, the state came down on him? Is that maybe what's going on?
First of all, I think he created this image of himself dancing with girls around him lately, in the latest few years, especially in Turkey. That's why especially the Turkish authorities or people started to believe in this image and started to take him lightly. So when everyone were busy looking at this image, in the background, behind closed doors, he was carrying out these activities, these criminal activities. And if we look at the raid that was carried out by the police station, we are seeing 121 houses raided on the same day, and a list of 31 criminal charges. You have to find the evidences for all of them. I think this takes time, but when we look at the time of the start of this case, it's 2016. So the state has been determined to find out evidence against these charges since 2016. So from this we are understanding, after the coup d'etat carried out by FETÖ organization, the first thing the state did was to take a look at this Adnan Oktar organization and try to see what he's doing.
Do you think there are similarities between FETÖ and
Yes,
Adnan
I think
Oktar's
there is a lot of similarities between FETÖ, PKK, and Adnan Oktar organization, which came around at the same time, on the same year, 40 years ago.
I want to ask you something very personal, if you don't mind.
Course.
You're an accomplished, educated, smart woman, right? He called you a kitten. He considered you a kitten. I don't know if you're in, this is an older photo, I don't know if you're in this photograph.
Not on this one, but I'm in photos.
Yeah, you are in some
him.
of his older photographs. You're not in this one, but you're a highly accomplished, educated woman. How did you feel about being called a kitten, his kitten?
In the beginning of our conversation, I told you I was determined to leave in the beginning of 2013, at the end of 2012. So in that time, even that hadn't started yet. But I was seeing the possibility of this going to this, the former face of the organization turning into this. So that's why I was uncomfortable, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to leave.
Can I ask you if the most egregious of charges, child rape, can I ask you if that took place, if you were aware of it during your time in the organization?
I know right now that it took place when I was in the organization, but I didn't witness it with my eyes. But with all the other complainants, which is more than 100, there are also a lot of very young people, including people who were abused when they were 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 14-year-old. And with all of these complainants, in the last months, we have become like a family. So I know all their stories and I know their complaints. That's how I know these really took place.
Mohammed Waqas Khan, for people around the world, within Muslim communities around the world, who come across the Harun Yahya books, might find them interesting, might want to read them, what's your message to them?
Well, I would say that there is two parts of his life. One, his work, his books, and then his personal life. I would personally say that his personal life is should not be our concern if he is not involved in any kind of criminal activities. But his work, you can agree or disagree. I mean, if he is against evolution, you can agree with his arguments or you can disagree. I personally don't agree with his arguments, but they are fascinating, they are attractive, and his work is really good work. So just to go with his work and see what happens in the court.
Ceylan, very finally from you, what is the ultimate goal of the group or the cult? What's the ultimate goal? We knew with FETÖ it was to take over the state.
Yeah, so this is a different sort of organization. FETÖ was a very, very large organization which was reaching thousands and thousands of people. This is a very different kind of organization. This is, I think, on purpose kept much smaller to be able to maneuver the organization much faster. So I have never seen and I never thought that he had ultimate goals like taking over the state or any conspiracy theories like this. But I think most importantly, and which makes it the most dangerous, is his ultimate goal is to keep the organization alive. So just to keep the organization alive, just to keep himself alive, standing, he can do anything. He can commit any crime, just like a drug addict, for example.
Right. It's been fascinating getting a deeper understanding of Adnan Oktar's group. He goes under the pen name Harun Yahya. They're an enigma to so many people, and for so many people, when they come across both sides, it's a little bit jarring for them, and that's why I think it was really interesting for us to have a look at this. Ceylan Ozgul, Yisrael Medad, and Mohammed Waqas Khan, I thank you all for joining us here on The Newsmakers. Still ahead on the program, Iraq struggles to rebuild Mosul 1 year after defeating Daesh. We ask, could the terror group make a comeback? And Iraq faces an economic crisis that's led to violent protests across the south. Can the new government turn things around?